Hello and good day, Mike Adcock with an update on Tropical Storm Peipah located to the southeast of the Philippines. This briefing is based on the 12 Zulu Japan Meteorological Agency advisory from the 8th of April. Taking a look at satellite imagery, we do see some convection. They're starting to consolidate on the northern side of our center of circulation. Looking at microwave imagery, which we'll take a look at here in a moment, there may be some signs of some weak vortices with this system. Two issues with that. First off, that may be hampering the low-level development, but furthermore, if you've been tracking the JMA as well as the JTWC positions over the past 6-12 hours with this system, you may have noticed a northern acceleration, and that may be accounting for that this is really not a forward motion increase, but rather just a relocation of the center of circulation. Looking at JMA's advisory at 12 Zulu or 8 p.m. Philippines time, the center of circulation was estimated about 505 kilometers east of Surigao City or 610 kilometers to the east-southeast of Tacloban. This is moving to the northwest at 17 kilometers per hour. Winds are a very optimistic 65 kilometers per hour with gusts up to 95 and a pressure of 1,000 hectopascal. And we'll get to more of that in a minute, but really, I'm thinking 65 is really a stretch. JTWC as well as Pagasa have already downgraded the system to a tropical depression. That seems actually very reasonable. JMA's really been holding on to this 65 kilometer sustained winds, which I just think there's not a whole lot of evidence that supports that particularly. Did mention the microwave imagery, and this is coming out of ASCAT. Now, granted, this is several hours old, and what JTWC is referring to is a composite or a mosaic of images, if you will. But what you're looking at is, okay, so you got the main circulation down here, and it's very broad and very broad. But then you look up here, and you got some more just what appears to be further circulations, not complete cut-off centers of circulation, but just some increased circulation across this axis here. That may be hindering the development with this system. Do notice that the bulk of the convection is to the north of the system in that deeper convection, which is the basis of JMA's rather 65 kilometer per hour winds. I still think that's a little on the bullish side, a hair bullish. I really think this is a borderline tropical depression to tropical storm. And I can easily see the case of just going for safe rather than sorry. Because you are relatively close to land, keeping it as a tropical storm. And why I get to that is looking at the Dvorak analyses. Really not much going on here. NESDIS is basing their analysis off of a shear pattern, which only gets a data T of 1.0, which is practically nothing. It really wouldn't be considered a tropical depression. About 45 kilometer per hour winds. JTWC, not much more than that. T 1.5, which is about what it is a 3/10 convection wrap. Still, that's about 45 kilometers per hour. JMA, for some reason, is still going extremely bullish. 2.5 for their data T, which is 65 kilometers per hour. That being said, all the agencies are going for a current intensity of 2.0. 2.0 is only 55 kilometers per hour, which would be a tropical depression. So I find it very odd that JMA is saying the current intensity is tropical depression status, yet we're going to go against our own analysis and call it a tropical storm. So it's something that we're going to continue to monitor. I think they're just holding on to it rather than downgrading it. You start to lose, once you downgrade it, you lose the further track. And just because it is close to the Philippines, I think they want to keep consistency. Looking at the broad picture with the MTSAT imagery here, not much to talk about. Do have a large area of high pressure off to the north. Do see Peipah there off to the southeast of the Philippines. This is really captured in the 6Z JMA surface analysis system. High pressure in the East China Sea extending to the southeast of Japan and across the remainder of the Pacific. Here's JMA's forecast track. Again, moving off to the northwest there over the next few days. This is really shaping out to be more of a Visayas and then later on a Luzon threat. JMA not really going for much intensification, getting up to about 40 knots, which is really not much more than what it is right now. JTWC, here's their extended track. Interesting thing of note, and this is what they kind of talk about in the near term, just because there's such weak steering environments out there, the system is slowly tracking off to the northwest toward that weakness in the subtropical ridge, but there is model guidance that would suggest that this forward motion can decrease and even go relatively stationary at a point over the next couple of days, until the subtropical ridge builds back in and starts accelerating this system off toward the northwest. And you see that here in the last few points here in the JTWC track. The thing that is interesting is this is becoming more of like a Samar threat, Samar, Bicol, and then on into Greater Luzon. So while the system is weakening, this is really shaping up to be a heavy rainmaker across the northern 2/3 of the Philippines, so something to definitely keep in mind. Here is the Pagasa track, being called locally Domeng. Notice they have downgraded this system to a tropical depression. Really not a whole lot of forward motion over the next few days as this system is caught in that weak steering current. And then here is a mosaic of all the forecast agencies across the Western Pacific. The amazing thing is with the weak steering current, with all the uncertainties, with these these low-level vortices and everything else that's going on, all the agencies are in relatively good agreement of what's going to go on. So that's kind of interesting, but should vote some good confidence just in that alone. You have that many meteorologists. I mean, right here you've got 6 groups of meteorologists that are saying one thing, which is really a Samar threat. So that does give a little bit of confidence back to the solution. Here is from 6Z. You do notice the GFS and the WRF pretty far south from that consensus, really more of a Leyte or even a northeastern Mindanao threat. And I really think just based on the shift northward, that these track solutions are becoming a little more obsolete, and we're starting to see that more northern trend. Here's the intensity guidance, and then again, this really captures what we've been talking about. Really no change in strength, or maybe some slight strengthening over the next few days prior to landfall, but really nothing much to talk about. And shear is another thing that we've been tracking, and I mentioned a few days ago that we were really dealing with the shear prior to Palau. Well, at this point, we're really seeing shear decrease 5 to 10 knots there to the east of the Philippines. So that the atmospheric conditions are becoming more favorable. It's really can't get its act together, and it's not, which is a good thing, but the only concern I have is the slow forward motion, making this more of a very heavy rain threat, flooding concerns, as well as mudslides. Here's the GFS track over the next 5 days. This has pressure, wind, and total precipitation highlighted there in orange. 100 millimeters, red is 200 millimeters, and in white 300 millimeters. A big thing to talk about here is there's really not a whole lot of forward motion over the next 5 days, at least with the GFS solution. So a little concerning there again with that precip, but notice the amount of rainfall that does occur over the Visayas as well as Luzon. So looking at some heavy rain showers across a good majority of the Philippines over the next several days. Not a whole lot to talk about on our surface weather plots. This is caught between the Philippines and Palau, so not a whole lot. Do see some increased cloudiness there in Mindanao, there on the western periphery of Peipah. Of course, keep it tuned over at Western Pacific weather.com, as well as Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. We'll be continuing to track the forward progress of this system. You can also join in on the conversation at storm2k.org, and make sure to follow me on the various social media sites. They're listed below. Thank you all for tuning in. Be safe out there. Have a great day and take care.